Good evening and welcome back to 31 Horror Nights. It's October 20th and tonight's classic is Don't Look Now. Much like Carnival of Souls from earlier on in this month, this is a movie that wasn't as critically praised when it was first released, but over the years a lot of other people have taken inspiration from it, and it's sort of retroactively garnered its classic status. If it were up to me, that wouldn't have been the case because I didn't think that this movie was good at all. This gets a 4 out of 10. Much like The Omen, I feel like Don't Look Now just tried too hard. But while in The Omen, that came in the form of ridiculous death scenes and an over-the-top score, in Don't Look Now, this meant that there were so many things happening on this story and nothing was focused on properly. To me, it felt like they were trying so hard to be subtle and nuanced and innovative that they forgot to actually tell a good story. Don't Look Now is about a British couple, John and Laura, and John is played by Donald Sutherland, who people nowadays mostly know as President Snow from the Hunger Games movies. The parents are inside the house while their two kids, Johnny and Christine, are playing outside, and because they don't watch them while they were playing around outside, Christine falls into the nearby pond and drowns. However, there was a weird moment where John sort of got a feeling about it and ran up to, rush over. The film then cuts to a few years later when they're in Venice, Italy. Apparently, John is a restorer, and he's been assigned to do a lot of art restoration, architectural restoration for a church in Venice, which is where the movie primarily takes place. I have been to Venice, and it is a very pretty city, and they use the sort of settings and just layout of the city very well in this movie. And another thing I can say about this film that I cannot say about The Omen is that I do like the score in it. The main theme is this piano melody that's rather understated, but does work well and is used to good effect in a few scenes. While in Italy, the wife comes across these two old women. One of them is blind and claims to be a psychic or a medium who can see and communicate with the dead. Apparently, the medium is getting a lot of premonitions and sightings of the dead daughter, Christine, with them, and warnings about something bad will happen if they stay in Venice. By the way, they don't even mention Jonathan. I only knew that he was a kid, that he was their kid too, way later on in the movie. You see him at the beginning, but they never mention having another kid and they're just completely alone in Venice, so I had no idea what was going on until they got a call saying that he got in a accident when he was at the school that he was staying at. Because it's not like they want to keep their kids close to them now. The movie is about a bunch of weird things that start happening to John. He starts seeing Christine, or at least somebody running around in a little red raincoat that looks exactly like the one that Christine was wearing when she dies. I can't really remember a point in the movie where somebody besides John sees her, though. One big detraction I can take from this movie is honestly, Donald Sutherland's acting is not very good in this. When he's just talking, he's fine, but whenever he has to yell or raise his voice or show any intense emotion, it just comes off extremely flat. I saw him when he went out to grab Christine, the daughter, after she died. He was crying, and the sounds he was making were just When he yells, he sounds bored by yelling. It's just not a lot of great acting coming from this guy. In fact, due to the subpar acting and subpar writing in a few parts, I can't think of a single dramatic moment in this movie that actually worked. Or maybe there were, and they were just in Italian. A lot of the scenes are the people talking in Italian, and there's no subtitles or anything, so you better be bilingual if you want to actually follow this movie. Going back to my earlier point, there's so many things happening in this movie that nothing actually gets the proper focus it needs. There isn't enough development into the relationship between John and Laura. I didn't buy their romance at all. There isn't enough development given to how they feel and the guilt that they have for having their kid die due to them not watching them. There's a plot thread about a murderer running around in Venice who kills people and throws them in the canal, but that isn't focused on very much. There's a subplot about maybe John having the same sort of second sight that the medium has, but that's not really explored that well either. It almost feels like they had 2, 3, 4 different ideas for how this movie should go, and instead of picking one, they decided to try with all of them. And a movie with a confusing plot can work as long as it has really likable, relatable characters to ground the audience, but I didn't really like any of the characters in this movie. Don't Look Now just sort of came off as a cluttered mess. There are good ideas in it, but none of it is fulfilled. And all the ending did was just make it even more confusing as to what the movie was trying to actually be. Don't Look Now may have influenced other movies, but for me at least, I don't think it holds up. The Omen is probably still the worst one of these movies I've seen at this point, but Don't Look Now gets a close second. And now let's go into spoiler territory, but first I think I need to address the elephant in the room, the sex scene in this movie. This movie was released in 1973 and had a sex scene in it that was very controversial and scandalous at the time. It's not like I thought it was offensive, it isn't even really all that explicit, it's mostly just soft core type of stuff, but I also thought it was completely pointless. I don't think it did anything to further the story or the characters. It was supposed to cement how in love these two were. A lot of the interactions they have throughout the movie sort of contradict that. A lot of the times when John and Laura are talking, they just sort of seem to be talking at each other, like not really caring what the other person thinks. There's also a lot of weird digs being thrown around. John at one point just sort of offhandedly says, "You're losing your mind," basically, and when Laura is mad at John, she just brings up out of the blue, "Is your idea to let the kids play unsupervised that day?" If they were supposed to have a really strained relationship, that would make more sense, but I don't really think they are. But anyway, when the kid who's still in England has an accident, it's not that bad. It's not like he dies or anything. The mother still goes back to England while John stays in Venice. And that's when he starts really seeing a lot of the person in the red raincoat, or I think they called it like a mat in the movie or something. I don't know, it's probably a British term I don't know about. More weird, trippy things start happening to John. He is on a boat and he's going around, and then he sees his wife and the two old ladies, like the one where one of them was the medium, they're on another boat, and the wife is supposed to be out of the country at that point. But then he gets a call from the school in England, and he talks to his wife on the phone, proving that she was still in England while that was happening. After some more stuff, John finally decides to, actually chase and catch the person in the red raincoat who's been following him around, or, just being where he is a lot of the time. But then, in an odd sort of twist, it turns out to not actually be the ghost of their dead daughter. It's the murderer who was, brought up once or twice in the movie. This dwarf woman who just happens to be wearing a red raincoat exactly like the one that their kid died in. So, yeah, she kills him, he dies, and then the thing he saw, which was the wife on the boat with the two old women, that was true. It was like a hearse boat, and that happened after he died. This movie could have either gone in the direction of supernatural things are happening and they need to get to the bottom of what's actually going on, or supernatural things seem like they're happening, but they're only like that because John's crazy. I feel like they tried to sort of do both. Is it supposed to just be a coincidence that the serial killer was a dwarf wearing a red raincoat? And it's not like there's nothing happening in the movie that implies that this actually is supernatural. He already got a warning that he would die if he stayed in Venice much longer, and while he was doing restoration one day, he was up on this rope and pulley thing. A board just falls down for some reason, and it lands on the thing that he's standing on, and he almost falls down and dies. Is that supposed to be a coincidence too? Don't Look Now is just a cluttered mess. It's trying so hard, but it's also trying so many things at once that I have no idea what it wants from me. And the end result is a bunch of good ideas thrown together in a way that comes off as just mediocre. I'm guessing there are other people who just got more from this movie than I did. Okay, I'll see you tomorrow.